Welcome to Charmed Life, a radio show discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm your host, Tricia Carr. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are broadcasting live from Hollywood, California, from the Sunset Gower Studios, Universal Broadcasting Network. And you can find us live every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific by going to ubnradio.com, Channel 1, or any of my social media platforms on Facebook or on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at Tricia Carr Charm, as well as at CharmedLife1111. My website is TriciaCarrCharm.com, where you can find my services and classes and whatnot. And I would like to say hello to the Lightworkers Lab, the online spiritual community of which I am a guide. And we are, my partner and dearest friend of all time, Crystal Ann Compton, is the founder. A reminder that Crystal and I are having a 12-week intuitive intensive. It is starting just a little over a week. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about it, to open your intuitive abilities. It's amazing. Do check it out at thelightworkerslab.com/intuitive. And the registration is still open. It will be open for just a little over a week, but I highly recommend that you go and check it out, thelightworkerslab.com/intuitive. And also, Crystal and I will be doing a free training on opening 5 steps how to open your intuitive abilities. And you can find that and find access to that. It's going to be this Thursday. So go check out thelightworkerslab.com/webinar. It's one of those online webinar trainings. Crystal and I are going to be together, and we're going to be doing this training right there for you guys. So you'll get a sample of the kind of work that we would be doing in the 12-week program. So I would love for you guys to go check that out. And without further ado, I am so excited to welcome back to Charmed Life intuitive empath, writer, counselor, teacher, designer, and the author of several guidebooks, the most current one being Transparency, Seeing Through to Our Expanded Human Capacity. And please do welcome Penney Peirce. Hey, Penney.
Hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm just overjoyed to have you on again. Penney joined us. It was about 1 year and 3 or so months ago. It was the very first episode that I did Charmed Life here at UBN, and I was, I mean, my socks were knocked off then. They're knocked off again, so I don't know how lucky I am. But, you know, as you say, the field is giving us exactly what we need. So thank you, field.
Yes, thank you, field. Exactly.
I've been more and more open to working with pure synchronism, because I believe that is really we have that capacity, and that's just another way to accept the fact that absolutely everything that is coming to you is offered by the field for your growth, right?
I agree. I think that part of really opening up spiritually is start to trust unconditionally.
Yes.
Both your own self, and then the flow, and that, to me, the flow is the way that life shows up. That it's kind of a function of the collective consciousness, all beings, even all animals and trees and everything, all sort of evolving simultaneously.
Yes.
So that whatever I need comes to me, and so that I can give it back to them. It's like this wonderfully coordinated, interconnected flow thing. So, I mean, I really pay attention to that a lot.
I'm actually becoming misty-eyed. I mean, I'm so happy to be here with you, but you said animals, and I had a pretty turbulent week with my animals. 2 of my cats had to go to the emergency room for 48 hours, and that's a hard time to be trusting the field and trusting that you didn't just make some mistakes and trusting that everything's going to be okay. But it's kind of like those moments give you that deep clarity and offers the opportunity to become deeply present, even though it's really challenging to. But they're fine. They came out perfectly okay.
That's good. Yeah. It's hard to stay out of the left brain and into that judgment of things being right or wrong, yes, and good and bad. And, that what happens to us is that we can judge it. We can't really. It's just, to me, it's all data, that it's all information about something that we're personally working on, either creating or clearing in ourselves, So I try not to, to think that snags or problems are, anything but just the next thing that I need to learn or need to understand.
Right. I like that. It's either we created it or we're clearing it. And that was part of what I looked at with my cats, was because obviously it brings up a lot of grief and anxiety and fear of loss. And so I just chose to say, well, that's just stuff that's in me that needs to be cleared. It's essentially my shadow showing itself. And my sweet cats are offering cooperating with me in this opportunity to clear it. And for them as well, because they have their own mental, personal, spiritual personality journey. So I just decided that that's what we were doing.
I think animals often really serve us by, they don't hold on to things so much, but they do serve as kind of clearing holes in the field,
Yes,
where
portals.
a lot of things that we may have unconsciously in us are now moving out through them.
Yes.
And they let it go for us in a way.
Yes, they're portals, exactly.
Portals, yeah, that's the best word.
Yes, but, and a portal for us to connect with unconditional love. I wrote an article about a year ago about how, animals are much better at unconditional love. They're much better at vibrating to unity, and they're obviously, they're telepathic much better than we are, or at least aware of their telepathic abilities, and you depend on it more than any other kind of physicalized language, blah, blah, blah. I'm an animal communicator, so that's something that I'm really interested in. And I wrote this article about how we feel that radiating unconditional love coming at us from the animals who we have in our homes, who are our family. And it is not because they're ignorant, and it's not even because they're ignorant of what's going on in our heads about the self-doubt and the scripts and everything. They see that and they love us anyway,
Yeah.
in spite of it.
Yeah. I think, a lot of it is the animals are so much more right-brained, if you want to make it that way. Say that.
Yes.
I think that they're much more immersed in the moment and in the, unified field. So they're not stopping things with their left brain to try to make meanings out of it like we do.
Right.
So they're much more pure in terms of just transmitting energy.
And so they are great teachers in transparency.
Yeah, that's true. So yes, exactly. Exactly.
Well, let's talk about transparency. The book, as well as just the concept of transparency. Can you give the listeners just a little doorway into what it means to become transparent?
Yes. I think that, first of all, though, we're very aware of the word right now. It seems like it's happening in politics every day. And to me, that's what I'm calling horizontal transparency.
Yes.
That means that it's in the physical world. It's about the information age, really. We're all wanting free access to truth,
Yes.
And I think we're having a strong sense now, as we get more and more sensitive, that we're hearing lies, that we're hearing partial truths, and we want the real thing, So there's this greater sense of wanting authenticity all around. So in information, that's one thing, but that's just the first way we're understanding transparency. The next level of it is becoming personally transparent ourselves, which means I call that vertical transparency. And really what that is that you're realizing that the soul, you are the soul, basically. And you are in your body and in your personality, and the soul is running the show. And you do know what you're doing, at some deep level. So as soon as you really fully identify with the soul as yourself, then suddenly things start to change. One thing is you start to see the spiritual truths inside matter. If you can see the soul inside the body, you can start to see light and spiritual energy and spiritual principles focused inside the physical world.
Yes.
And then the physical world starts to change to operate according to spiritual principles.
Yes. Right? Yes, because you are bringing your perception, your awareness to it. And so even quantum physics tells us where we bring our awareness, it expands, it changes, it lives more, if for no other reason, in our own perception.
Yes. And another thing that happens then is that the soul really, that level of spiritual consciousness does not understand fear. It doesn't have fear because it doesn't have separation, right? So when you identify as the soul and start to realize that your life is being run by spiritual universal principles, that and everything's interconnected, then, there's no outside world. Then you find that everybody's connected to you. It's kind of mutually supportive. It's win-win-win.
Yes.
And things don't operate against themselves, actually, in that realm. So when you don't have fear, what happens then is you don't have a lot of the behaviors that go along with what I've been calling the opaque reality. Yes. Which means that we pretend that we can't see through the surface of things. Mm-hmm. That everybody's solid, that there's no inner world. It's just solid objects. And so when you become integrated, then you start to be able to see through the surface. And in other people, you see them as the soul. You see their energy. You see where they're stuck. You see where they're blocked. You see their talent. Nothing's hidden. And so therefore, we don't need masks. We don't need to lie. We don't need secrets. I mean, it's ridiculous. Secrets, everybody can see everything anyway. Yes. Why bother,
That's always been my experience, and especially being a person who is very dominant as an empath and that empath function. I really believed when I was younger that lying wasn't really a thing, that if anybody lied, it's just because everyone was agreeing to pretend that new reality together, but everyone knew the truth.
Right.
I genuinely believed that, which made me a rather honest person because I just thought it was impossible to lie.
Well, I mean, that is really, I think, the way the soul operates. It's like, all right, well, let's have fun creating a reality together, no matter what kind it is, Yeah. It's one of the kindnesses of the soul is to agree with other people so that they can play together. But I think that, that with transparency, then the more you become the soul, the less you hide, the more you allow yourself to be exposed, right? To just, okay, you can see me if you want to see me, and I've made mistakes, and, I say everybody's had spinach in their teeth or something, and so that's just human. So why bother trying to hide that and be so perfect? Because we're all just beautiful anyway. Right. And in a way, perfect in our harmony. Mm-hmm. And so we might as well let people see the mistakes and the talents, because a lot of people hide their talents.
Yes. Hiding the light under the bushel.
With false humility, or, because they think if I'm too good, other people won't like me.
Because that is a sort of trauma that we receive from society growing up. That, that's the kind of a quintessential thing that happens in grade school and high school, that someone thinks that they're too good for us, or, is a snob, or it's really challenging for a young person to be able to own their strengths. And because of that feeling of exposure, and we're still healing from that.
I think that, if you're smarter than somebody or a better athlete or whatever it is, then other people will almost be afraid to be around you because they'll be judged, but with transparency, it always operates with compassion at the core, so there's never that kind of, you can be authentic and honest, but you don't beat people over the head with your honesty. Of course. It's not brutal honesty. It's kind-hearted and always given in a way that uplifts other people. Yes. So I think we forget that when you're visible and you're open and you let people see you and you can see them, that compassion is what really, modulates everything.
Oh, right. Beautiful. I love that. Compassion modulates.
Modulates
the circumstances, and the interaction. So far as horizontal transparency is concerned, it is, talk about synchronicity, talk about serendipitous timing, because this book was released last year. Was it about mid-year? I think
October.
Okay, October. Right. But you were writing it for however long before.
Oh yeah.
And then October was just about the time when all of the political and all in the industry about the sex scandals and everything else. It's amazing. It is. It occurred to, I think actually it was given the guidance just yesterday that all of this that is coming out is the collective conscious having shadow work, and shadow work being, when the shadow is what Carl Jung coined the unconscious or the subconscious mind, and that we put parts of ourself away into the shadow because we believe if they allow them to be a part of ourself, we will be rejected and therefore die, because that's what, we believe as a child, and we
That's it.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And when
it's kind of reverse magical thinking.
Yeah. It's killing our own magic. It's like an autoimmune disease of our magical powers. And so when I am coaching my clients through some kind of shadow work or encouraging them to start to do some kind of shadow work, the belief on the surface, the ego, the fear is that doing shadow work means we're going to injure ourselves if we look at past trauma or past pain or whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is you're at a state of injury, and opening it up and letting it release is just releasing it. So you're not re-injuring or you're not creating injury. It's a state of injury that you're existing in, and you're choosing to pay attention to it so that it will be transmuted. And that's what's happening with the collective consciousness. It's not like sex scandals just happened and that people were just assaulted. It's something that has been happening, and that is actually, and we're releasing it. It needs the attention. It needs to get aired out.
I think, what I'm saying a lot in my books, but especially in this last one, is that, we're already the soul. We're already fine. We don't need to evolve.
Oh, yes.
We're just trying to get rid of the clutter that's on top of, who we actually are.
Yes.
And so the shadow work that you're talking about is what I call clearing the clutter.
Yes.
And often those are simply contractions of thought and energy, like belief systems, things that have gotten calcified and stuck, and, that are preventing the flow of the soul, through the personality.
Yes.
Or preventing you from feeling what you are as a soul. It interferes with that experience. I think one of the first steps is that we have to realize that we are the soul. And I think to do that, you do a lot of practice with getting into your home frequency that I talked about in my book, Frequency, or you might call that your preferred state. Yes. What is the feeling of the soul in the body, the soul as the personality, when you're really feeling good, charmed, if you will, where you're feeling, that you have a natural childlike joy, that things are fine the way they are. And that's your normal state. So that when you go to start clearing, the difficult stuff, the scary stuff, you basically come from that place of, hey, wait a minute, but I'm the soul. Yes. And I'm bigger than this stuff, and I can have a perspective about it and put it in and just see it as a partial perception, maybe, or something I contracted around in fear, and it's like inhaling and never exhaling again, and then you just hold the energy.
Yes.
So I think that it helps an awful lot and speeds the process up when you have something to compare with the negative states. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like,
the home frequency.
If you know what it feels like to be in your preferred best state, and you choose that, and you realize I have a choice about that. Nobody can make me feel bad if I don't want to.
Right.
So then when that old stuff comes up, you're saying, but that's not even mine, or that's my mother's, or, yes. Where did I get that?
Yes.
And then you keep returning to center, and it clears, fast now, really, really fast.
You call it home frequency, and I love that. And I meditate upon that and affirm that often. And with my clients, especially ones who are coming from that place of being so sensitive that they give their energy away and they're not sure what's theirs, what's not theirs. So the way that I say home frequency sometimes is I encourage them to spend time in their native land, because how could you possibly know if you have your mother's stuff or whatever if you don't even know what your stuff feels like?
Exactly.
If there's no walls on your house.
That's right. Well, we overlap with our parents. That's for sure. We share a certain territory, like a little Venn diagram, where the two circles intersect.
Yes.
But we have our own, we come in with our own life purpose, with our own talents, and I think it's like a time release capsule, over time they get brought to the surface and activated. And there's a certain sequencing naturally, I think, throughout a life that we need to trust. And that's part of that flow we were talking about. Just to remember that whatever you need to know is going to come to you just when you can use it. Not too soon, not too late, but when you can really use it for your own growth.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing when I had my metaphysical awakening. It was one of the first, I don't know if you want to call it mantras or just synchronistic kinds of lessons that I discovered, and sometimes would, through grit teeth, be saying perfect timing, but it's somehow something miraculous would happen. It would make the timing perfect.
Yes.
You don't have to, and you don't have to be perfect for timing to be perfect. That's what's really cool about
that is a good, I'm going to quote you on that.
Thank you. Yeah. And literally there was one time when I just realized it is some kind, how magical we are, because I was running late for a class and I was so pissed at myself for being late, and I showed up and the door was locked, and the teacher comes out 5 minutes later and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought we were starting later." I was like, seriously, running through traffic, speeding, saying perfect timing, and, doing my best to believe in my own vertical transparency.
Yes.
Not perfectly, but it worked. Well,
Yes.
You speak of home frequency, and so far as that vertical transparency, I guess, what are the key elements to pursue transparency or to become transparent personally? And how does one, if they can't understand how to experience their home frequency with regularity? What are some of those
I think
steps?
the first thing is trust. And I talk about radical trust, in the book, about you have to trust yourself, that you are the soul, that you know what you're doing. And then out of that comes trusting the flow, that life is going to show up, and you'll notice what you need to notice, and you'll make yourself aware of what you need to know right when you need to know it, so that, that is a kind of perfection, a natural perfection. And then you trust other people in the way they show up, and you trust that what they say is what you're trying to say to yourself, that we're so interconnected.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that kind of trust in everything and in life in general allows you then to relax and to start to become a combination, I would say, of authentic, vulnerable, humble. Because I think humility has been misunderstood. I think really it's not to be less than something. It's not an opposite of ego. Mm-hmm. It is more of a statement of truth about who you are in any given moment. Yes. Just a simplicity, really. So if you cultivate those qualities of just being the simple self, you don't have to try to be better than anything or anything else than what you're doing, but have a sense of wonder and a sense of really wanting to grow. But then that authenticity is, let yourself be what you are in the moment and be honest about that. And then be exposed, as I said. Let yourself be open, undefended, and let people see you. If they can see you, they will. If they can't see you, they won't see you. So you don't have to worry too much about regulating that.
Right.
Because it kind of regulates itself.
Yes.
Yeah. And as you practice that and are just quieter and simpler, you start to see farther, right? You can start to see through the surface of things. And that means you see through the surface of people's personalities and their masks and their, hiding mechanisms. And then what do you see through too? You see their soul. You see where they're afraid. You understand their vulnerabilities. And if you have compassion, then you understand how we all have that in common. And then great love starts to happen. And, so I think that's where it all starts. And it's a courageous thing to do in the beginning.
Yes.
After a while, it's not courageous anymore, because if you don't do it, it just feels awful.
Right. And you have so much, and then you can actually utilize your linear mind to prove it to yourself.
Right.
It happened so many other times if I just trusted.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you start there and practice, practice, practice.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you get knocked off center, you get back to your home frequency. Take a breath. Remember, I'm fine the way I am. I'm going to open myself up again and relax all my self-protective mechanisms. And um, and I think a lot of it has to do too with learning to be quiet for a while so that you can shift from your left brain, into your right brain,
Yes.
where you can be in direct communion with all knowledge, right? And if you can just be with that for a little while, you start to get brilliant insights that are not based on the past, but that are coming straight really through from the soul and the soul's connection with all other souls, and so you start to really, your genius starts to come out.
And there's as you say, allowing things to be simple. This is something that I have worked with my clients on, is that sometimes the hardest thing, or possibly the hardest thing to do, is to allow things to be simple, because conventional, the noise kind of thought tells us that things are hard. Life sucks and then you die. And there's no way that, tries to, again, that having the autoimmune disease of our magic,
right?
that things are, when we allow things to be simple and allow things to work for us, it makes us feel like a kind of free falling, makes us feel weightless.
Yes. I've talked to a number of friends recently and shared the fact that I don't seem to be very ambitious right now. That, in fact, I seem to just be walking around the house, cleaning up and tidying up and going through all my closets and getting rid of old clothes and, tending to things, making things feel good. And one of my friends said, yeah, same with me. I feel like I'm not doing enough, but I'm cleaning out my sock drawer, or I'm cleaning out my t-shirts. And then another one said, if there's anything distracting in your personal environment that isn't really an essential thing that feels like your own essence, by essential, I mean of your essence.
Yes.
That it's a distraction, which then takes energy away from you being able to welcome in your new work. Because this is a time right now when a lot of floodgates are opening, and actually we're getting ready to welcome in a whole lot of new talent or new aspects of ourselves. I think,
yes,
we've been feeling stuck, and now we're feeling like, whoa, the wave is taking me, but where am I going? And so there's a preparation for that, I think, and
Absolutely.
that's kind of that is that quiet time where you have to be humble and say, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with this experience. Everything's working and it's brewing here, and it's getting ready. But I liked that idea about that everything in my reality is essential.
Yes.
I started thinking about, or, feeling into that and thinking that the things around me are of me, that I'm connected to everything, and there are some that are more on my frequency that I'm moving into, and others that are a little lower frequency that I don't really relate to.
Yes.
So I've been getting rid of the ones that I don't relate to. And this is, I think, an important thing to do every now and then.
I think that's what we're saying. That's what's happening with the collective. We are getting rid of these things, by what they're showing up as some atrocities, but we're getting rid of them. We're shining the light on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, that is something this afternoon I'm going to be doing a lot of house cleaning, physically, literally.
Right. But I mean, it's happening in politics. It's happening in all kinds of arenas. Look at the sexual abuse scandals that are suddenly surfacing. It's like they're cleaning house about, low vibration human behaviors are coming up to the surface.
The domestic blinders are coming off, and we are seeing the dirt in order for us to clean the house.
Yeah. Right.
And what is interesting? The way to get to take off those domestic blinders is to have your mother-in-law come over, and then suddenly you realize, oh my gosh, I have to put up that painting and I have to take this stuff out. And I think we have this this conscious, more consciousness coming in. And that's sort of the guest that we're preparing for in a way.
It's a guest. Yeah. Welcoming the guest.
The new guest, the home guest. I would love to, I would actually like to take a moment to acknowledge the sponsor for this episode of Charmed Life, HelloFresh. This is your weeknight dinner solution. HelloFresh makes it so easy to cook delicious, balanced dinners for less than $10 a meal, which I think is mind-blowing. You can try things that you never think to cook, which is something that is a real bonus to me, even though I am a really, really good cook. Not bragging, just a fact. I do get in a rut, and I get, kind of domestic blinders about ideas of what I want to cook for myself and my family. You can choose your delivery day for when it works best for your busy schedule, and you won't have to spend all night in the kitchen because all of the recipes take like 30 minutes or less. Really, it's amazing. They have 3 plans to choose from, whether it's classic, veggie, or family, which is great if you have a larger family. Everything is balanced and really satisfying. Just this week, I made a greens and farro bowl, and farro is a grain. So I gave the grain to my husband since I am grain-free, but we also had asparagus, zucchini, and walnuts, and it was really delicious. And like I say, really was satisfying for both of us, and balance. Balance is really important to me, not just in life, but in cooking. I'm very, I'm very sensitive to that in my diet. So for $30 off your first week of HelloFresh, visit HelloFresh.com and enter the promo code CharmedLife30. Again, that's $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. Visit HelloFresh.com, enter CharmedLife30. And we're back with Penney Peirce, the author of Transparency, Seeing Through to Our Expanded Human Capacity. And so transparency really, Penney, is related to enlightenment. And I think that you kind of touched upon that by saying, essentially, we are already enlightened. We don't.
I think it's like where we start from. It's our home place, really. But we all, I think, wanted to come into the 3-dimensional reality and play here and learn what it is to be physical and have creations and materialize and dematerialize things through the vehicle of our own imagination and attention.
Yes.
And, so we're learning that. But, when you come into this world, you end up feeling separate from each other, from your soul, from, the spiritual realm. And then we get pain and suffering. And then we think this is a place of pain and suffering. So to me, that's the opaque reality, that we've been resigned to. Like we think that's normal. Except somewhere inside of us, we know it's not normal. This is not what I really think, because I think we all have memory somewhere deep within of this kind of purity of those higher realms. So we know what it feels like, how joyful it can be, and we're yearning for it.
And that cognitive dissonance is causing us even more confusion and even more constant suffering, or the feeling of suffering. And we have only the choice to sort of be in the suffering or to try to deny it more. And then that's when something like these atrocious human behavioral affects that we're seeing, that's, I think, when we've added on to that unconsciousness, we've added on to it even more. That's probably, even more opacity.
Yes. And there's 2 things I want to say. One is that when this negative stuff starts coming up, often we become aware of polarities.
Yes.
Good and bad. This is right and wrong. We have bipartisan politics, and the 2 sides are so opposed to each other, they can't even see each other's point of view now. Right. They're so polarized. And so part of becoming transparent is to eclipse those polarities, to move beyond the either or into the both and, into that third point above the triangle, above the triangle, right? So that you see how the 2 polarities fit together, and you remember that there's a higher reality. So if you find yourself caught up in oppositions, or fighting or taking sides, you're in the opaque reality, right? So that's one little thing you can catch yourself doing, that you can then say, wait a minute, stop, let me go bring those 2 things together. Great yin yang symbol, perfect symbol for this, and integrate them. This is all about integration of the two worlds.
Yes.
The physical world contains the spiritual world. The spiritual world gives rise to the physical world. Yeah.
And the physical world is spirit as well. That is that is integration, is to understand that, to see the spirituality in the physical.
Yes. And I think that, it's a difficult time right now. I in the book, I call it the bridge time.
Yes.
Because, some of us have been working on ourselves for quite a while, and we're getting clear. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say we're near enlightened, maybe, but we're getting clear, and we're much more loving than we used to be. And we're able to be kind of thought leaders or to help other people get it this way. Mm-hmm. But there are other people who are just beginning to get the idea that they could wake up, yes. And some are starting the practice. Some don't know that it's possible. Right. And others are fighting to stay in their old, opaque reality because it's comfortable and it's what they know. So there's people in all different arrays of clarity right now. And it's so important when you are getting clear to be able to develop methodologies to not backslide too much, to be able to maintain yourself. And of course, we all oscillate. We're going to be clear and then not clear, then get back on purpose, and then, get knocked off by another thing, and oops, wait, back on purpose again. So I've put a lot of things in the book about how to deal with this bridge time, because the idea is like, ooh, if I become totally transparent and exposed, I'm going to get attacked, or it won't be safe. I won't be safe.
Or I can't relate to others. Or what my ego says is that if you're holding light all the time, then you will no longer relate to humans, and you won't be humans anymore. That's something my ego says to me when I'm like moving forward.
Yes.
Yes. That we will lose our relationships, we'll lose our humanity. But the truth is, we become more deeply human and more able to connect.
The opposite.
Exactly.
Which is so funny, because I talk about in the book about this is sort of the time of ironies, that, everything you thought was one way is really another way in when you start moving into the transparent reality.
Yes.
I used to think it was really hard to find a relationship the more, enlightened you got, that there wouldn't be very many other people. But the fact is, it's easier to find them because they kind of stand out.
Yes.
No.
Right. And the magnetism is stronger because there isn't the stuff in the way of the magnetic pull one to the other.
Yeah.
And so bridge time, I love that you mentioned this, because I have I've been experiencing sort of my metaphysical new part of life. I mean, I've had spiritual growth my entire life. Of course we have, but for a much shorter time than you have, because you're a pioneer in the intuitive development movement. So it's to me, I wouldn't even trust myself to believe that we're at a bridge time, because I'm like, well, it's my bridge, right? Because I just started this. So to hear it from you, we're not crazy, right? It is different. This is a different time, more than many times that we've been experiencing.
I also think it's different because it's like we're living in a very vastly expanded present moment now. The perception is changing. That's the transformation that we're in, actually, is. And my book, Leap of Perception, talks a lot about that. But moving from linear thinking into a spherical kind of thinking, where, we're living in a ball of reality, and everything's in the present moment now. So, and this is hard to imagine, but the past is in the present moment, and the future's in the present moment. Mm-hmm. Everything's there for you right now.
Yes.
But at different frequencies.
Right.
So what used to be the future are now potential realities in your present moment, but at a different, maybe higher octave of the frequency you're in right now.
Yes.
And if you can place your attention at that frequency and maintain it, it'll happen. And it won't take years. It can be instantaneous, but it's all about a function of placing attention on things and maintaining attention until the body gets it, and then it becomes real.
And that reminds me of you talking about liminal space. If you're able to spend time in the liminal space, you can see that expanded eternal now, as opposed to a linear sort of timeline. And and it helps
Yeah.
you to access that. So explain,
Well,
if you want to explain what that liminal space is about.
yeah, I think liminal really means the threshold.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's like the boundary land between realities where, and there's a space before the threshold and a space after the threshold, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before you reach the threshold, you let go of the old cycle of growth and the results you have. It's like you get bored.
Mm-hmm.
And so you say, well, I'm satisfied. Look what I did. I accomplished these things. This is wonderful. I feel the wonderfulness of having done all this. And now just relax a minute, make some space, and move into that quiet time where you stop talking and distracting yourself and pushing yourself and go into, it's kind of a spaciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And it relates to the caterpillar and the butterfly, because when the caterpillar makes the pupa around it, it actually melts down
entirely,
and all of its particles float around, and then they rearrange themselves and be into the butterfly.
Yes.
So that's kind of what we do in liminal space. We let go of the old form, we let ourselves kind of melt down a bit and open up into the imaginal realm and say, well, I don't really know who I am, but look at all the options I have. And and you go, oh, look at all the variables. I could put this together and that together and make this and that, and you can create new realities. And then as that starts to formulate, you still have to wait a little while while that gestation occurs. So, and then when it's ripe, it's like a ripe fruit. It falls off the tree. And the way that is experienced is that suddenly you get a great new idea, or someone asks you could you come and do this for us? Or how about this? And you don't have to use willpower to make it happen then. Yes. It comes naturally as the next natural thing, and it's just gracious.
And you explain, I remember in Frequency, about having that relationship with the field, that if you actually do try to force will, the field will correct you. If you if you force it forward, you will be corrected back because we're moving together, because it's a co-creation of you and the field.
That's right. If you try to push it and do too much too soon, you'll have to get rejected by that amount that you tried to move forward.
Yes.
Because the rest of the field's not ready to move yet.
Right. Yes.
And you kind of messed everything up by trying to go too fast. So if you just relax, everything will flow with you like you're on a wave, and it just takes you like a surfer. You don't have to use all that effort, but just relax,
This is kind of a funny side note, but there's this weird phenomenon about how bees actually die on tennis courts. My husband and I are tennis players. Yeah, it's weird. And tennis pros will tell you this. There are bees that go to the middle of a tennis court and they're on their last few breaths and they're expiring. It's a strange thing. And somebody must be doing a master thesis on it, because it's a weird thing. And my husband has picked up that bee before if he finds a spider web, and he'll give it to the spider. And I said, no, you cannot mess with the field that way. Maybe that bee was ripe in a way that you gave it to the spider, and now we're going to be just dominated by Spider-Men.
Or
exaggeration with
spiders that don't know how to get their own food.
Right, or the spider. That's a good point. We're going to have these gluttonous spiders who are just sitting around. But that didn't happen, fortunately. He stopped doing it, though.
But it is true. I mean, it's, every overuse of willpower really disrupts the harmony of things.
Yes.
It's really unnecessary. And I think the correct use of willpower is simply choice. In each given moment, you choose what's choosing you. You sort of get with it, and you use your attention to focus on those things that seem to be arising anyway.
I once had this conversation with a tree. It's not the first time I've said it on this show, so my audience is probably accustomed to it. But this tree, interestingly, explained to me that will is innocent, and it's an innocent partner like gravity. Gravity is powerful, but it's innocent. And however you partner with it is how you'll have either a positive or negative or neutral outcome, quite frankly. You're just walking around. But that's basically what willpower is, or will in itself. And that, I like that, to choose what's choosing you. That's what really will is. Oh, I never thought of it that way, Penny. And the thing that this tree actually explained to me first when I was connecting with it was, I chose this spot to have this experience with you. And it made me feel all like shy and say, what are you talking about? That's not possible. I'm just a person here for a moment. And he was explaining to me, he doesn't have a gender, but it makes me feel better to anthropomorphize it. The tree said absolutely every single choice is just as important as the previous or the next one. And so every choice in all space and time, it made it as important for me to be here with you and you to be here with me as anything else. And
Perfect.
And then explain to me about will.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is, again, the magic in our environment and in the physical reality, because that was a telepathic conversation or exchange or whatever you want to say with the tree. That's my interpretation of it, the energy that I received. And
yeah, I think, I'd like to recontextualize willpower, because I don't want it to seem like it's that we have to use force to get something to happen, right? I mean, it is really just that in the moment choosing of what to place your attention on, really. That's all it is. Because the materializing force happens from the universe or the unified field all by itself.
Yes.
You place attention on something, and that's what draws it actually down in frequency so that it suddenly materializes around you. You're not attracting anything from outside.
Yes.
You're not forcing anything. You're not being clever and charming to get it to come to you. You just simply place your attention on things, you see. And that is the most powerful force that we have, really. It's the skill, I think, of the intuition age.
Yes. That reminds me of, and talking about the different timelines and that everything is, future is now, past is now. It reminds me of, there is a person named Daryl Anka who channels, who channels Bashar. And Bashar says, Bashar is an Essassani, an extraterrestrial consciousness, for those who aren't familiar. And Bashar says that we are selecting billions of potential realities every moment.
Yes.
That's basically what the process of moving forward is. And when a person is kind of shifting from that linear understanding to the spherical or the limitless one, the liminal one, understanding that when you switch to a new reality, the past and the future align with it. So it isn't like, what Back to the Future told us, you're going to go back and see your mom, and that's very linear. That's not actually how time is, or it is inside of the greater truth of it being timeless, that it's an illusion, actually, that time is an illusion.
Well, it's true that, when you heal any part of yourself, it heals it back through time, all through the whole field.
Yes.
And in some small percentage in other people, but also it'll heal your lineage.
Yes. And the way that I received that fairly recently, was that when you identify with love or healing or wholeness, that it makes love is so powerful that it can make wrong right, meaning in the past. So as it heals you, it means, what happened this week with my cats having to go to the thing, I learned something from it. It made that the right thing to happen because I identified with love about it. And that's another way of saying it heals that past. It heals the future as well, and as well as others' timelines.
Yes. Yeah. The more I learn about all this, it's just so really, truly magical and blessed, how everything fits together so well, how mutually supportive every soul, every being is for every other soul and being.
Yes.
How everybody wants you to win.
Right. Because it is an ecosystem, and an ecosystem is championing every part of it, every particle.
Yes. Yeah. And the magical thing about becoming transparent, and living in a transparent reality, is that things become very frictionless. They are become extremely fluid, and then you love surprise. You can't wait to see what the next great thing is that is coming to you, that's just what you need. and what comes out of you too, your creations or your ideas or whatever. It's what the other people need.
And it requires
it's like
a shift.
Yeah, it's perfect fit.
But it requires a shift to be okay with frictionlessness. You know?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And that shift is somewhere in between, is that liminal space of
right.
Wait.
I think, yes, it's like if we aren't suffering, or if it doesn't have snags and it's not hard, then we're not, good, worthy people or something.
That is what we're shifting from.
Yes.
And
it doesn't mean you don't still have to learn things in time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to do Japanese calligraphy, you don't get it immediately.
Right.
You practice, and you get all the nuances of the flow of the lines, or any craft, any talent, it's not an overnight thing.
And that's
so we do put in our dues, right? We still do.
Because we're still living. And that's actually something to comfort that ego who says, but I'm not going to be human anymore. And it's like, you are. You still get to create, and you grow and you learn. And
yes,
that's really just mind-blowing. We have just a few minutes left. I would love to let people know your website is penneypeirce.com. It's PENNEYPEIRCE. I got it right, didn't I?
Thank you. That's great.
Yes. Is there, and folks can buy your book on Amazon, I'm sure. Is there anything else you would like to let the audience know about with your work, or anything else that's going on, or some thoughts on transparency?
I will be teaching a intuition and writing workshop in mid-April, with a novelist down at Hutchinson Island, Florida, which is just north of Fort Lauderdale. So that should be great. That's on my website.
Okay. And
then I'll be doing a intensive training for intuition for counselors and helping professionals in Copenhagen in the first weekend in June.
That's one. Both of them.
That's all on my.
Are they both
in calendar?
I'm sorry. They're both in person.
Yes,
workshops.
In person.
And the latter one, that is, for people who are cognitive behavioral therapists.
Sure, therapists, psychiatrists, any kind of counselor, and it'll be a 3-day intensive.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow, that's powerful work. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, everyone. Transparency, I highly recommend, as well as Frequency and Leap of Perception and The Intuitive Way, right? Am I getting that book title right?
Yeah, those are the main ones. There's some ebooks also, like Be the Dreamer, Not the Dream. There's a big guidebook on dreams. So 10 books altogether.
Amazing. I just am so honored to have you on. Everyone hears me talk about you, quote you all the time on Charmed Life.
Thank you.
And my clients as well, all of the work that I do and in my classes. Such a contribution to consciousness and the intuitive development space. So I appreciate you so much, Penney Peirce, for being on the show. So honored. And I hope maybe you'll come back again. Anytime. Oh, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining me today again on Charmed Life. Do find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Tricia Carr, and on any podcast outlet by searching Charmed Life with Tricia Carr. And I will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.